Shrill rhetoric from China. China is escalating the situation along the line of actual control and the border. China has released images claiming the Indian army carried out a transgression. China on Thursday released photographs claiming it to be evidence that the Indian army had transgressed into what China claims is its territory. But so far, we cannot independently verify the authenticity of these images. We do not know where they were taken, when they were taken. Are they new images? Are they old images? We do not know just as yet. I want to cut across to India Today's Anant Krishnan, who joins us live from Beijing for more on the story. Anant, what more can you tell us about what the Chinese army and the government said about these images?
Oh, well, Gaurav, China is certainly stepping up its offensive, not just on the ground, but it seems in an information war as well. As you said, very quickly, they released images. We can't really verify them independently or authenticate them. But I think it's just significant that the very fact that they took this step, very unusual step, of releasing these images, which followed about 5 statements in a complicated situation at the China-Bhutan-India tri-junction.
Oh, absolutely. Also joining me is our consulting editor, Shiv Arur. Shiv, explain what government of India, if at all, or government sources, what are they telling you about these images? A tank.
Now, this is actually a pretty rare instance where you've actually seen an allegation from China saying that Indian Army soldiers with earth-moving equipment have actually crossed the disputed border and crossed into their side. There are different voices coming in from the Red Army, from the Chinese government, from their foreign office as well, talking strangely in pretty different voices. Now, the Indian government is currently assessing the situation. The Indian Army chief is in Sikkim. He'll be returning tomorrow. He's on the ground assessing a situation that has become more than just a diplomatic incident. Remember, transgressions have happened on the disputed border many, many times in the past. Sometimes, dramatically, like it has happened in the Ladakh sectors over 2-3 years ago. But this time in the Bhutan, Sikkim, Tibet tri-junction, China says this is not a disputed part of the border, and yet this earth-moving equipment has come in, and that is an act of belligerence. It is, an act of defiance of what the peace is that actually prevails in that area. Having said that, the fact is the Indian government is strangely silent so far. There's no specific word so far. During previous transgressions, there has been specific word from the Indian government about what the situation is, whether, demarcated, non-demarcated lines have been transgressed from either side. So there's clarity as far as India's response is concerned. This time, they're still assessing the situation, and I think that is an indication of how unprecedented what is going on actually is.
Oh, absolutely, Shiv. Stay with me for a moment. Now, why is China rattled? Because one after the other, statements coming from China, from their foreign office, from their army officers, even an officer of a rank of a colonel talking in a rather shrill manner about the chief of the army staff of the Indian army. So why is China so rattled? The Chinese foreign ministry today issued a statement saying India should withdraw its troops, setting it as a precondition for a peaceful resolution of the ongoing dispute between two countries. The Red Army has also tested a 35-ton battle tank in Tibet, which it claims was only a live-firing drill. So despite these shrill statements from Beijing, India has not reacted so far. India Today's Anant Krishnan in Beijing and Manjeet Singh Negi in Delhi with this report. A tank firing exercise by the Chinese army in Tibet. The People's Liberation Army carried out live firing trials of the lightweight 35-ton tanks.
I'm telling you again, this is not the way. Please, don't use force.
There is an escalation in tension along the India-China border to the extent that China stopped the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra through the Nathula route in Sikkim. China has accused India of stopping a road construction program in what China claims is its territory.
India believes that China wants to move closer to strategically important Chicken's Neck in Siliguri by building road close to that point.
Bhutan has issued a démarche to China asking Beijing to stop road construction in what Thimphu insists is disputed area. Chief of the Army Staff General Bipin Rawat is in Sikkim with top commanders assessing the situation. China's response has been shrill and threatening. China told India to withdraw troops as a precondition to settling the dispute and resuming the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Is China rattled by India's growing proximity to the US and growing clout in the region? India, the United States and Japan are to carry out the biggest ever naval exercises in the Indian Ocean region next month. The announcement was made by the US President Donald Trump himself.
Our militaries are working every day to enhance cooperation between our military forces, and next month they will join together with the Japanese Navy to take part in the largest maritime exercise ever conducted in the vast Indian Ocean.
China has constantly tried to block India's progress, be it India's entry to the nuclear suppliers group or action against Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist Maulana Masood Azhar. As Sino-Indian ties hit a new low, China is once again back to its blackmailing tactics, pushing the envelope, seeing how much can India be made to bend. So far, there are no signs India will buckle.
China today releasing one of the strongest statements to date in recent times against India amid the border standoff in Bhutan. The People's Liberation Army reacting very strongly to Army Chief Bipin Rawat's comments on India being ready for a 2.5-front war, saying that India should remember the lessons of history and stop clamoring for war. This came in as the Chinese Foreign Ministry released photographs claiming that it had evidence to show that India had trespassed into what China calls its territory, but what India and Bhutan believe is Bhutanese territory where China is building a road. And the latest sign yet that the standoff between India and China is set to continue. Reporting for India Today in Beijing, this is Anand Krishna.
Stopping the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, each statement shriller than the other and several statements coming out, carrying a live firing drill of 35-ton tanks. General Shiketkar, what's China doing? Why is China so rattled and not a word from India?
Gaurav, firstly, in the philosophy of warfare, it is said that the principle of warfare, capacity building takes time. Once you are perfect in your capacity, you have built up your capacity, your ability goes up. Once your capacity and ability has gone up, your intentions can change. And in this context, we must see the Chinese preparation. When you mention tank firing at the highest level or highest altitude, it is to see the impact of high altitude on the effectiveness of the tanks. And that cannot be done on Indian border. So they have to do it there. But we cannot ignore these ground realities. It is taking place. Secondly, let me assure you, having been part of the Director General of Military Operations as a brigadier, as a Major General, having dealt with China for 10 years as a member of the team, which I was part of, and having been a Corps Commander of 4 Corps, during the worst period of Kargil War, I handled these Chinese.
Okay.
They have their own system of conveying the message.
So what's the message China is conveying? What's the message,
also perfected the art of telling lies. The message China is conveying to us, firstly, don't get too close to America, number one. Second is, don't be too harsh on Pakistan. Thirdly, accept what Chinese want us to accept. The problem we have mentioned about the Bhutan problem is between Bhutan and China. We have a small team, a training team. Chinese are telling lies that Indian army has done. I know that Doklam Plateau very well. I know it well.
Yes.
It's in part of Chumbi Valley, overlooking the Chumbi Valley. It has got its own strategic importance, and Chinese have been building. So they want Bhutan to allow them to do what Chinese want to do, totally ignoring the interests of Bhutan. And what are the interests of Bhutan? Are the interests of India as well.
Yes.
They are the interests of India as well. So therefore,
exactly
India
at this very sensitive time, General, and I want to quickly bring in Anant Krishnan on this. Sensitive times, Vijay Gokhale, one of India's sharpest China hands, he moves to Delhi. So what signal is India sending?
That's right, Gaurav, as you and Shiv mentioned, it's a bit strange that India has been silent. And there's a sense in Beijing that in some way that's emboldened them to come out with almost daily statements from the PLA and Foreign Ministry as well. India certainly has a very strong case to make if China is building a road into Bhutanese territory, which and obviously India can't keep quiet if it's coming right up towards the Chumbi Valley. So India does have a very strong case to make, and the question, and therefore, at least why isn't India publicly making it? It's also very striking. This incident is unprecedented in several ways beyond this very strong public posturing by China that we've seen. There's a lot that's uncertain still about their intent, about the timing, why China chose to build a road in June. Was it linked to what's happening with India and the US and the Malabar crisis coming up?
Yes.
I mean, you and I can guess, but there's always opacity surrounding China's decision making. But it's really curious as to what prompted China to do this at this time, whether it was aimed at Bhutan and their stalled boundary talks, whether it was testing India's willingness in the India-Bhutan relationship. I think at this point we can't rule out any of these as motivation.
Okay, is China pushing the envelope to see how much can India bend? How much will India bend? Will India stand up for Bhutan? Bhutan's a friend of India. We have an Indian military training team in Bhutan. Will India stand up for Bhutan as China tries to bully Bhutan? And Bhutan's taken a bold step, General Shiketkar, by issuing a démarche to China saying stop illegal activities in disputed territory. So Bhutan's taken a strong step. Perhaps China's waiting to see if India will stand by Bhutan and stand up to Chinese bullying in this area.
Yes, of course, of course. Bhutan has to take it a flame. Bhutan cannot be bullied just because a small nation sandwiched between the powerful countries. It doesn't mean you take it for granted. They have all the right, and they are absolutely correct in launching a démarche, because Chinese have been intruding into Bhutanese territory for over a period of time.
Yes.
And this is another Chinese grand strategy, that you keep entering into the territory and then you start claiming the territory. Yes. Bhutan is absolutely right. And Bhutan, on who else can Bhutan depend? India is the next door neighbor.
Absolutely.
We have good relations. We may not have any defense treaty, but is it not the moral responsibility?
And a friend in need is friend
that none of our neighbor,
Absolutely,
not only Bhutan,
General.
even anybody.